Earth is home to many creatures. Some may even consider a few of them monsters. But what of those more elusive and hidden creatures? The ones we just can't seem to find. Welcome to Monday Morning Monsters. Cryptozoologist and paranormal researcher Barnaby Jones talks about the unknown, mythical, undiscovered, and unidentified creatures from around the world, and the people who have seen them, look for them, and research them. Hear from witnesses about their encounters, as well as renowned names in the field about their work and research. Barnaby is the founder and lead investigator for Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society based in Wisconsin. CAPS travels across Wisconsin and beyond looking for connections between different phenomena and how they can all be connected. Now, your host of Monday Morning Monsters, Barnaby Jones.
Good morning, monsters. How are you all doing out there today? It is a lovely Monday morning again, and we're back. Today's guest is going to be Timothy Renner, and he's not here yet. Hopefully he's here shortly. He is out in Pittsburgh, so there's a little time difference. So hopefully we'll have him on shortly here. I want to go down some of the stuff that Timothy has done. So Timothy Renner is a author. He is a musician, a folk musician. He is the host of the podcast Strange Familiars. You can find that everywhere on all your podcasting platforms. He has written several books, all the way back to 2016, Beyond the Seventh Gate, Bigfoot in Pennsylvania, Don't Look Behind You, Bigfoot of the West Coast, and the two-book series of Where the Footprints End. I have Volume 1 and Volume 2, both written by Joshua Cutchins and Timothy Renner. Very interesting books. And what else? He's done all kinds of stuff. And he has a new book out in 2022 here called The Witch Cloud, The Haunted Bridges of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So hopefully he's with us here shortly. We're working on that. I want to talk to you a little bit about what CAPS has been up to. This past weekend, the Cryptids, Anomalies, and Paranormal Society team was up in Elmwood, Wisconsin for the annual UFO Days Festival. So as you guys know, hopefully by now, the CAPS team is working on a documentary of UFO activity in Wisconsin, and that should be out next July. It'll be a full-length documentary talking to witnesses, doing experiments, going on investigations, looking for UFO activity, and hoping to make contact of our own. So that's what we are working on. And this past weekend, we went up to Elmwood, as I said, and we got to participate in that festival. We got to listen to two of the three speakers. And the first one was a guy named Bill, who actually did research on the original cases and stuff there with the police officer who witnessed the main story of the UFO. But these UFO activity even went back farther than that for Elmwood, Wisconsin. And this one night, the police officer is out on patrol, sees this orange glow in the distance, and he stops and reports it. He has MUFON and all these UFO reporting agencies come out to do an investigation, and he ends up going back out there again to try and see this thing again. And another guy actually finds him passed out in his patrol car up on this hill, this ridge overlooking what is like a quarry. And the police car was dead. All the engine turned off. The spark plugs all exploded. The capacitors on them all exploded off. The engine dead. They had just done repairs on this police car. I want to say 2 weeks prior to that, so it was all fully redone and everything. So something very strong electronically went and manipulated that vehicle and knocked unconscious the police officer, who was taken to the hospital. And this is all documented. They actually still have, well, they don't have the spark plugs anymore. Actually, the government came in to try and look into the spark plugs and the police car and stuff, and they interviewed the guys that did the work on the police car, and they said that they actually took all that stuff right to the junkyard right away and got rid of it, because what do they want with it, you know? And so they had all this stuff, and the police, or the not the police, the government couldn't get their hands out, and they were very upset apparently about that they couldn't have those items. So yeah, very interesting. But that's cool. Strange Familiars. Yeah, there you go. Strangefamiliars.com. Thank you. Um, yeah, so our guest, as I said, Timothy Renner, hopefully is here in a little bit. But he is the host of Strange Familiars podcast, and several books, articles. He's an author, podcast, musician, illustrator. I believe he did the artwork on these books as well. So those are kind of cool. For those of you listening, I'm sorry you can't see that, but those of you watching live and on YouTube and Facebook, you guys can check out those pictures. But yeah, so Caps has got a lot of stuff going on. Right now we're doing a lot of investigations and stuff for our next season, as well as still working on the Haydn adventure up in Upper Michigan. We just wrapped up a very interesting project up there using pheromone chips to try and lure in Sasquatch, and hopefully these chips have been deployed on other expeditions around the world, around the country, and most recently was used as a spray on Expedition Bigfoot, where they sprayed it over the top of the Washington forest. And we actually picked up those as the chip form and deployed them around an area around Haydn Adventure in Upper Michigan. And we set up a trail camera array around that whole island to try and document anything that was coming in and out of there. And a lot of people will argue that, you know, you don't get a picture of Bigfoot on a trail camera because they avoid these trail cameras. But we've tried something a little different. Instead of doing just a motion sensor trail cam, we actually set up the majority of these trail cameras as time lapse. So no matter what, if there's something there that triggers the trail camera or not, it's still taking a photograph every 5 minutes. And we actually got a picture of what we believe to be a Sasquatch last year, or 2 years ago, I'm sorry, in 2020, using that method. You can see it on our YouTube page on the Finding Haydn series. The last episode, I believe, of that series. I can't remember the name of it offhand, but we just released that back in June on our YouTube page, which is Wisconsin Caps on YouTube. And so we're trying a new we're trying these pheromone chips up there. We just wrapped up that experiment, and it'll be quite a while before we know if it was successful or anything that we captured, because we literally have over 50,000 pictures, I believe. I know there was 40,000 the last trail camera download that we did, so we got to be well over the 50,000 picture mark right now. So we have a lot of evidence to go through, and that'll be on season 3 of Finding Haydn, and we're actually only on season 2 for the new episodes that'll be airing in the spring. So season 1 just wrapped up this past year on YouTube. Season 2 will be out this coming year, and then what I'm talking about right now with the pheromone chips won't be out for another year for you guys to watch, but exciting stuff for you guys to see. I'm excited to share that with you and show you what we got going on. Next week's show here on Monday Morning Monsters, we have the crypto-punkologist Kenny Irish is going to be on. And he's made quite a name for himself recently, and started doing the tours and stuff in the last couple years. He is part of a punk rock band, and he's been doing cryptozoology research for several years. And He has 2 books out. One is a book about all cryptids across the United States, and he talks about each state and some of the history of the state as far as what or when it was founded, the like Native Americans and stuff that were there, some of the interesting facts about the states, and then he gets into more of the stories and folklore and cryptids of each of those states. So I think it's his book is Cryptid Nation or something of that nature, but you can get that one now. And I believe he has a brand new book out that is all Canada. And that one just came out, but that'll be next week on Monday Morning Monsters. Again, that'll be the crypto-punkologist Kenny Irish, and that'll be a cool interview as well. So we're just waiting here today for our guest, Timothy Renner, and so he should be on shortly. But yeah, so that's what we got here. What do we got here? Nothing yet. Nothing yet. He is not here yet. I'm going to shoot him a message because that's what I'm going to do and see, make sure he's still coming. Again, like I said, he is in a different time zone than what I am, so sometimes things get a little messed up, but hopefully. He's active on Facebook right now, so he should be here. Hopefully, man. But yeah, so Timothy Renner, again, is our scheduled guest for this week, and he is an author. He is the host of the Strange Familiars podcast. He is an illustrator and a folk musician, and he has written several books from Beyond the Seventh Gate in 2016, Bigfoot in Pennsylvania in 2017, Don't Look Behind You, Bigfoot of the West Coast, and the 2 Where the Footprints Ends books here. And as well as his newest book is The Witch Cloud, The Haunted Bridges of Gettysburg, which is pretty exciting because this past year, we went out to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, our last episode on YouTube, and we actually investigated 2 of the bridges that are covered in that book. So hopefully he's here in a little bit and we can talk with him about that. So yeah. If you guys have any questions, for those of you watching, feel free to leave a comment. If you have any thing that you want to know, either from me while we're waiting or there we go, Amazon. There we go. There's his book up on Amazon. Link is in the show notes over there. Not the show notes, the comment section for his brand new book. But yeah, if you have any other questions while we're going here for myself, anything that Caps does, and then obviously when we get Timothy on the show here, if you have any questions for him, feel free to leave comments over there and we will answer them. If you want to come out and hang out with the Caps team, our next event is going to be Autographs for Charity, and that was the event that one of my past guests, Timothy, not coming to me here, Miley, I can't think of his first name. He was on here a couple weeks ago, and Tim Miley, isn't that right? Anyway, Autographs will be on in a couple days. Yes, thank you. Autographs for Charity is going to be up in September 17th. And that'll be our next event that we're going to be at. That is in Ripon, Wisconsin. It is at a bowling alley there, and it is for charity for a animal shelter. And we are going to be out there along with, for those of you familiar with my other show, Whispers from the Dark, one of my other guests. I am drawing a blank. Today is just let's talk about today. Today is just a rather slow day here. It's warm in the trailer, and the brain is just not functioning at full capacity. You know, it's just one of those days. There we go. Autographs event. Gosh, look at somebody's on the ball today. Thank you very much. It just says Facebook user. I'm Not sure who you are, but thank you. I think I know who you are. Um, Jay Bachochin is going to be there. He was a guest on my other show, and he'll be there along with Dustin Perry from Ghost Hunters International. You can meet him. Chris Williams from Ghost Hunters International as well will be there, and Shane Pittman will be there as well. Yep, Stephanie. That's what I thought. Stephanie's awesome. Thank you very much. Um, yeah, so again, pointing out for people out there that don't know, if you comment on some of our stuff because of Facebook's new secrecy stuff in that they don't want, not secrecy, but confidentiality stuff, it just shows up Facebook user unless you tell me who you are, so I can't tell who you are. So that's why I wasn't sure who was commenting, but thank you, Stephanie. Yeah. So some of the stuff that we got coming out for Wisconsin Caps, we have our next episode of Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society will be out on YouTube next month, and it is going to be a haunted coal mine out in Kentucky. And it was really cool. It's Portal 31. We got to go out, and this location actually is a closed coal mine, Portal 31, and they do tours of the mine. You go down and you hear the history of the mine shaft, and get to talk with the guys that does the tour, obviously, and you get to hear a lot of cool stuff about that. And we uh, we got to go down there and do an actual paranormal investigation of the mine. And so that's our next episode coming out in August, July, yeah, end of August, I believe it'll be out. And then the next episode after that, we go down to Kentucky and we look for Bigfoot with Animal Planet's Turtle Man. So that was a really fun episode to shoot, and we got a lot of cool stuff coming out on that episode as well. So those are our next two episodes, and then we wrap up this year for our YouTube series with the Grand Opera House in Oshkosh. And that will be the last episode of this year. Still nothing from Timothy. So what do you guys want to talk about today? So we were supposed to be talking about strange familiars and like orbs and stuff with the Bigfoot phenomenon. So I guess we'll talk a little bit about that. So the whole other side, there's a lot of people that believe that Bigfoot is flesh and blood creature, and there is evidence, as you know, in the fossil record for these creatures to exist. You have Gigantopithecus, you have ancient man, and other creatures like that are, you know, in the fossil record for proof that Bigfoot exists. But there's a lot of stuff that people just don't talk about when it comes to the Bigfoot field, and a lot of evidence per se, or a lot of things that happen with these Bigfoot encounters that don't necessarily fall into the realm of what we believe to be normal primate behavior, normal human capabilities, and they fall in these strange area. And what I'm talking about is things like mind speak, the theory that these things can actually communicate with you. People have gone out and had encounters with Bigfoot, and they have had them communicate pretty much like telepathically, and they hear like example of a story would be a guy's walking down the trail, like a hiking trail or a bike trail, and he comes across a Bigfoot creature, steps out on the trail in front of him, and he wants to take out his phone and take a picture of it, and in his head he hears a voice that says, if you take out that phone, if you take a picture, I will kill you. And so the guy puts his phone, or leaves his phone in his pocket. He doesn't, you know, believes that this creature is speaking to him telepathically, not verbally, like he never heard anything out loud, but hears this mind speak in his head. Now, humans, debatably, do not have this capability of telepathy or mind speak. So it's considered very like paranormal, the things that these guys do. Another example of this is the orbs of light that are sometimes associated with Bigfoot. So a lot of people that go out there, for those of you familiar with the last season of Expedition Bigfoot, they talked a lot about this. Um, they talked a lot about this stuff where going out in the woods and they would see these weird lights. And I mean, you're out in the middle of the woods. There's no other people, there's no flashlights, there's no houses, there's no vehicles out there, and they're seeing these weird orbs of light. Myself, actually, I have seen one of these orbs. It was the first time that we were up at the Haydn Adventure doing our first weekend episode up there, and we're all sitting underneath the carport up there, and I was sitting directly across Craig Salk, the property owner, and I was shooting my thermal imager into the woods behind him, and he was facing me, I was facing him, kind of like, you know, um, and coming from behind him in the wood line, the woods behind him, was a blue orb about the size of a basketball. And we have all these cameras running. I have cameras on me. There's cameras on tripods kind of surrounding us, aimed in all directions. And unfortunately, we did not get the orb on any of those cameras. It didn't show up. Too far away, too dim, I don't know. But it does show up on the thermal imager. Not as hot, not as cold, but just this like soap bubble where you can see the silhouette of the orb, the bubble, whatever, floating away through the woods. It's on our episode, the Hide and Adventure episodes of our regular series. It's the first one of that. You can see the video for yourself. But that's the only instance of an actual orb that I have seen personally with my own eyes. Question over there is, do I think that the government alters or conceals information about Bigfoot and other cryptids, etc., like people feel they do with aliens or UFOs? I actually get that question quite a bit. I feel like on a lot of things, like the government may not know as much as we think they do, and they're still researching, because if they knew as much as they do, then they would. Let me put it this way. There's three reasons why, if the government knows that Bigfoot exists, why they're not putting that information out there. Number one is you have all the missing 411 cases, David Politis, and if you have your friends, your family, your relatives, and stuff go missing. And that's what David Politis does, is these missing 411, these weird, strange cases of disappearances out in the woods and stuff, in national parks, public areas. People are literally just out hiking with a group of people, and somebody goes, hey, I left something in the car, I'll be right back. And they go back to the car, and they're never seen again. They just disappear. Other people disappear, and it's not just like there's no evidence of them at all. There's none of their clothes, none of their backpacks, none of their gear. It's never even found. And if these people went missing and they were eaten or they died, they would still find the bodies. They would still find the clothing or artifacts, weapons of these people. The animals don't eat that stuff, especially like a backpack or a gun or a hunting bow or something. So it's thought that if these things are actually out there and they're doing this, that if the government released information that Bigfoot existed, that now they would have to admit that a lot of these 411 cases have something to do with that. And if that's the case, well, why didn't you tell me that Bigfoot was out there? Why didn't you, warn us? You're going to have, number two, you're going to have a huge loss in revenue from the DNR, the public national forests and stuff like that, because people aren't going to go out there because they're afraid of that these creatures are out there. And that's also going to affect, your hunters not going in the woods. Your national parks aren't going to get as many people coming out there. And then number 3, well, still on number 2, the flip side of that is you're going to have the hunters that are going out there trying to hunt these things. Because now if you come out and say that Bigfoot, Sasquatch is real, all these people that think that it's out there to begin with, they're going to go out there and try and capture one of these, try and hunt one of these things. So the government doesn't want that either. And then number 3 is with any endangered species of any type, you have a lot of the regulations of usage and stuff. So for the people that are going out there and trying to do forestry or new housing developments or any of that, you're now interfering with that because the government is going to have all these special permits, and you're going to need to deal with all that stuff and the red tape, and they don't want to lose the money from the logging industry, the oil industry, all the different places that they're going to lose money from. So, in my opinion, I don't know that if the government knows that these things exist or not. If they do, that is why they're not coming out and saying it for the reasons that I just said. But if they don't know, I don't know. There's also a lot of things, like I do a presentation on cryptids and what is cryptozoology and stuff. And as a part of that, I discuss a lot of these different animals that have been discovered. And, back to what we were talking about with the strange things associated with Bigfoot, the mind speak, the orbs. There's also the thought that these things can, like, shimmer. Like in the movie Predator, where they kind of have the shimmer effect, and you can just kind of see this glimmering outline of these creatures. And it's thought that they can do that. So the government would want that information as well. So they're potentially out there researching how these things camouflage and stuff like that. Like when we look at these different things, you have things that seem supernatural or paranormal and that couldn't possibly be true, right? Like the orbs, the mind speak, and so on, etc. But when you look at the animals that we do know exist in the natural animal kingdom, you have things like, we'll start out really simple with caterpillars, butterflies, and stuff that, go into this cocoon and then they come out a completely different creature. That's pretty strange. I mean, we know from studying them that this is what happens and how it happens and stuff. But you have very simple stuff like that. Now you move on to more things like octopus and the chameleon that can change their color to match their surroundings. And you have these very weird adaptations of the animal kingdom that if these things truly can do these things, then it's not without thought. It's not beyond our realm of capacity that Bigfoot could have other things that it's capable of that aren't just what we consider normal. And that's why we put it in this paranormal or supernatural realm. But just because we can't comprehend that and don't understand without the research and the studying, because, the average scientist does not have one locked up in his garage or something that he can study and, see how these things work, that we don't understand that. Another thing that these things are supposedly capable of is infrasound. And infrasound is actually pretty common in the large of the animal field. You have predators such as the big cats, the tigers, the lions that use infrasound, and as well as elephants that use infrasound. And infrasound is basically a sound level that is lower than the human ear can hear. So it's a very deep, vibrating sound. And the large cats and stuff use that to make their prey, sick, weak. And a lot of these people that have these encounters with Bigfoot get really intense headaches, or they feel sick, they throw up. as a result of this, even if they don't have a physical encounter with these creatures. So they're experiencing these physical effects of what we call infrasound, and you have the same thing happen with tigers and stuff like that. Now, elephants, as I said, use this as well, but it's used for long-range communications between them. They can use that to communicate. And this is all proven, like with instruments and stuff. Like, scientists know that these animals are using it. And when you have these larger animals like that are capable of using infrasound for communication or for disabling their prey, etc., it's, not unfeasible to consider that these primates, these Bigfoot, Sasquatch, to use infrasound to, keep people away, to make them sick, to make them want to leave the area, and things of that nature. So it's not like the things that people are experiencing with Bigfoot can be, even the supernatural things, the weird stuff that people experience or claim to experience with their Bigfoot encounters, doesn't necessarily mean that they're supernatural, or that these reports and stuff are not legitimate. Like, if somebody says that they have experienced the balls of light, or this thing was walking and just disappeared into thin air, it's not like it just disappeared. Back to our guest that was supposed to be here today, the Where the Footprints End. The title of the book is based on the fact that, when we find these footprints, you'll find one or two footprints, and then they just stop. So where the footprints end? Where did these things go? If they're walking along a sandy beach and all of a sudden the footprints just disappear. So are these things interdimensional? Did they go into a different dimension? Or did they vanish? Or, where are these things going that they're not leaving footprints anymore? And that's the basis of, this 2-book series by Timothy Renner and Joshua Cutchins, of Where the Footprints End. And they go into all of these stories of actual witnesses' accounts and their own theories and stuff of these creatures being of the Fae origin, or UFO, extraterrestrial, interdimensional, and they have a lot of interesting theories of that. So I'm gonna he just read my message, so let's take a break, and I will try and get a hold of him here and see if we can get him on the show for the second half, and hopefully he can stay a little bit later as well. So we'll be right back.
Would you like to be a part of something new, something different? Host a show with WLTK-DB Talk Radio and dare to be different. We offer full production and live engineering of your show by a real person, not a pesky computer. Just visit WLTK-DB.com and click pricing to get started. It's not as much as you think, and a great way for you to get your message to the world. Better hurry. Slots fill up fast and you don't want to miss out on this excellent opportunity. Visit WLTK-DB.com and contact us for more information now. WLTK-DB Talk Radio. Paranormal talk is our business, and business is good. From its beginnings, Used was created to unleash the excellence of nature's healing powers and bring them to people everywhere. With almost 90 years in the market, they are considered a worldwide pioneer in complete herbal wellness therapy. All Swiss Used products are natural, essential oil-based, pleasant, and harmonious. They are extracted from plants and herbs with the latest technology to ensure the best results. Swiss Used Live Healthy with consultant Stephanie will guide you in the right direction to find the perfect essential products just for you. For example, have an upset tummy? Try our soothing chamomile that has not only been used by many, but trusted for years. Keep in mind, you just can't get these amazing oils at your local shopping center. They're just too special. For that, you need a connection. And that connection is Stephanie. Want some? Then head on over to Facebook and search Swiss Used Live Healthy. That's Swiss Used Live Healthy, and contact Stephanie today.
Hey guys, I just talked to Timothy. He is on his way. His calendar messed up, and he will be on the show. He said give him 5 minutes. So I want to give you all again a reminder of Timothy Renner. He is the host of Strange Familiars, the podcast. He has written several books. He is an artist. He is an artist. That's the Brooklyn there. He is an artist, an illustrator, an author, a folk musician, the host of Strange Familiars podcast. He has written several books on Bigfoot and other strange things, such as the Beyond the Seventh Gate, Bigfoot in Pennsylvania, Don't Look Behind You, Bigfoot of the West Coast, and the two books that we've been talking about here, the Where the Footprints End series, Volume 1 and Volume 2, both him and Joshua Cutchins together wrote these two. They kind of each wrote several different chapters in there. And then he has a brand new book out this year called The Witch Cloud, The Haunted Bridges of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And Stephanie was kind enough to put links in the comments section over there for all those things. So again, he is on his way. He should be here momentarily, and we will have him on the show. Sorry about that. And hopefully, I mean, he is definitely, like, I've been super excited to talk to him since I got him scheduled on the show. So I hope that you guys are all worth the wait and I haven't bored you with my random ramblings. So if you're watching the show, obviously you're used to my random ramblings. And, you can listen to more of my random ramblings on Whispers from the Dark podcast, which comes out every Monday as well. And that is wherever you get your podcasts. Next week's guest is Kenny, the crypto-punkologist, Kenny Irish, and he will be on next week talking about all kinds of cool cryptids from the United States. And he has a new book of all the cryptids of Canada. So that's next week, Monday from noon to 1 o'clock on Monday Morning Monsters. But this week we have Timothy Renner will be joining us shortly. And he is all about the weird, strange, unknown side of Bigfoot and fairies, UFOs, interdimensional things, and all things weird and strange of the Bigfoot world. So we're just waiting for him to be on the show. Coming up, as I said, our next event is going to be September 17th at the Autographs for Charity event. And Dustin Perry's going to be there, Chris Williams, Shane Pittman from, all from, ghost hunting shows and Ghost Hunters International, and Hoser Files is Shane Pittman. As well as Jay Bachochin is going to be there, and the Caps team will be in attendance as well. And this will be in Ripon, Wisconsin. That's the next event that we're going to be there. And I just told that Tim is backstage. So without any further ado, please welcome Timothy Renner to the show.
Hey. How you doing?
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Doing all right. Sorry for my tardiness.
That's all right. That's all right. I've been trying to fill some pretty big shoes here for you. But yeah, so I've told everybody, I give a list of all your books and stuff that you've done. You're an artist, illustrator, an author, folk musician, podcast of the Strange Familiars, and a whole list of books. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. And once again, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everybody. If anybody was waiting on me, I'm sorry about that.
Awesome. Cool. So now that you're here, I want to remind everyone, if you have any questions as we go, we have a whole comment section over there. You can go ahead and leave a comment or any questions as we go. So we've kind of talked about some of your books and your work here. I have the strange, the Where the Footprints Ends books, and very cool, very awesome work. I'm a huge fan of your podcast as well, The Strange Familiars, and so go ahead and tell us a little bit about your books, Where the Footprints End.
Well, this was an idea I had when I started. So let me step back. When I started looking into Bigfoot, I think I start where everybody does. I think I started, there's a monster out in the woods. There's a undiscovered primate of some sort, or a hominid. And as I looked into it more and more, and particularly as I talked to witnesses, I started realizing, like, wow, there's a lot of weird stuff that goes along with this. And I thought, somebody should probably document this stuff, because an example I use is Bigfoot and UFOs. Like, when I first got into it, a lot of the guys that were into Bigfoot research for many years before me said, yeah, UFOs and Bigfoot, they happen together sometimes, but it's really nothing, not often enough to worry about. It's really not a big. Well, then I started looking into it, and it happens a lot. It happens a whole lot. And I thought, you know what? How rare is it to see a UFO, and how rare is it to see Bigfoot? If somebody's seeing two at the same time, or even people are seeing them around the same time in the same place, this is something. So, not taking the word of all these others that told me, there's not that much of it. No, there's a ton of it. Those two books you held up, that wasn't exhaustive research. Those were just examples we used. So there is way more weird stuff than we ever have in those books, but we just, we picked a few examples for each topic. So there's just a ton of it.
Definitely, yeah. While we were waiting here, I shared a story about we were out doing Bigfoot research in Upper Michigan, and I actually saw about a foot round basketball sized blue orb out in the woods.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, again, way more common than a lot of people would have you believe. Orbs are seen where people see Bigfoot. It just happens.
So do you have any, like, I mean, you have all these books and stuff, and your other work as well. Do you have any theories as to, like, what do you think the reason is for all that weird stuff with them?
Well, I can't tell you why, and no one can. Anybody who sits there and says, well, I know what Bigfoot is, they need to show their work, because nobody knows, including me. But what I can do is I can look at these different paranormal accounts across the board, whether they're UFOs or, Fae encounters or cryptid encounters. And I can say, okay, let's look at these things and let's see what they have in common. And they share a lot in common. And that kind of led me to the conclusion that, I don't know if these things are all the same, but they're certainly using the same kind of channels to get through. So that's why I say, my feeling is that they're all related. I mean, my friend Soraya from Where Did the Road Go podcast has a great saying. He says, if you see a strange light in the woods, it's Bigfoot. If you see a strange light in the sky, it's a UFO. If you see a strange light in a house, it's a ghost. But they're all strange lights.
That's a very good point. Very good point. Yeah, I started listening to your podcast, and I've listened to some of your stuff on there, like when I started researching Bigfoot a couple years ago as well. And it was very interesting to me to see, like, a lot of the connections between, the Fae and Bigfoot. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, from glowing red eyes to, people feeling like, well, people sometimes are literally taken to places. We have a couple stories where, Bigfoot actually picks up people and takes them to an underground place, which is, very kind of transported by the Fae kind of thing. To these odd, instances of, say, gifting, where people are exchanging what they feel to be gifts with the creatures. And you can map Bigfoot gifting pretty easily one-to-one over stories of people gifting with the Fae. They'll start gifting, they'll leave food out, and they'll stop, and then they say, "Oh, well, the Fae killed my cattle, because I stopped leaving food out." Well, modern people say, "Well, I was leaving Bigfoot, Twinkies out for Bigfoot or whatever it was, and then I stopped, and he went crazy, killed my dog, and now he hits on the side of my house every night." You can just map it one-to-one with these Fae gifting stories. So again, not saying they're the same thing, but I'm saying they act, very similarly.
So when we're talking about gifting, like people go out and it's pretty popular for people to leave gifts or food or small items, shells, feathers for Bigfoot. Do you think that that's like a safe practice then?
I wouldn't recommend leaving food. And this is just based on the quote unquote, rules. These aren't rules that are written down. These are rules that I've gleaned from reading a ton of folklore all over the world. So I wouldn't recommend leaving food unless you're entering into a situation where somebody has established leaving food and they've been doing it for years and years. Then you don't want to stop. That's why I say I don't recommend leaving food. Because once you start leaving food, you kind of have to continue, or there may be issues. But other kinds of gifting, maybe leaving. I have a friend who leaves out Scrabble tiles and they get arranged into words. Leaving shells, things like that. As long as it's biodegradable and you're not putting plastic or garbage out in the woods, I think it's a very effective way to establish some kind of communication with something. Again, we don't know that it's Bigfoot doing it, but something seems to be moving these things around and leaving other things there. So to me, it's an extremely effective way, but proceed with caution.
Now, we've heard some like stories of like the fact that Bigfoot is associated with the Fey creatures and that he is like the ultimate guardian of the forest, or the leader of the woodland Fae, if you will. Do you think that that's possible, or not possible, but do you see that in a lot of the folklore in that, or do you think that it's a completely different thing?
I think it's possible. Again, some people are frustrated by this because sometimes I'm hard to nail down, and I'll say, maybe, to a lot of these questions. But the fact is, like, I don't know. Nobody really knows. But my gut is that Bigfoot confirms to like spirits of place. So what would have been known as genus loci in the past, they very much seem to be, spirits of place. So guardians of the forest as a whole, or guardians of one section of the forest. I don't exactly know how it works, but that seems, just looking at the folklore and looking at the way Bigfoot seems to act, it maps nicely with kind of like I said, spirits of place. So I definitely feel there's a connection there. I'm sure certainly Fae are spirits of place.
What are your thoughts on like wood knocking? Some people believe that these creatures are out there slapping trees with a log or a stick. Some people think it like might be the chatter of teeth or actual just clapping, and others also believe that that's the sound of like the tree as it opens for these things to create a portal.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what do you think?
Well, I was woken up one night by wood knocks. I was camping in a place called Pandemonium. It was a ghost town about 6 miles into the middle of state forest in Pennsylvania. And we didn't go there for Bigfoot. We went there for the ghost stories. But sure enough, I was woken about 3:30 in the morning by wood knocks, and had enough presence of mind to hit record on my recorder, thankfully. So I captured them. And there was two, and one sounded to me like a big branch that was either a little more rotten or maybe it had bark on it, because it was sounded bigger, but it was a big hit, but it sounded kind of muffled. And then it was answered from a different direction, and you can see this in my recorders, a stereo recorder. One's more prominent in one channel, and the answering knock is more prominent in the other channel. It was answered, and it was answered by a very crisp knock that almost sounded like a baseball bat or something hitting a tree. So the two different knocks I heard that night had different character. In my mind, like I said, I imagined one just like a hardwood, green branch that was more like a baseball bat, and one being like more of a heavy log that was either rotten or had bark on it or something to muffle it a bit more. That's just how I imagined it from hearing the sounds. But I've had people tell me, yeah, that's the sound of them popping into this dimension. It could be, to my knowledge, I don't think anybody's seen them actually hit trees with sticks. If they have, it's escaped me. So how they're making that sound, I don't know. I've heard people say it's not sticks at all; it's their hands. They're just banging on trees with their hands too. So, but what it sounded like to me and what it sounds like on those recordings, it sounds like wood on wood for what that's worth.
I would have to agree. I've heard the wood knocks a couple times, and it does sound like wood on wood. That's something like you don't see. Like you said, I've never heard a report of them actually being seen doing a wood knock. We do have evidence of primates, greater apes and stuff, gorillas and stuff, do clapping and that. And so it's possible, if you're looking at them being kind of more of a primate species, that behavior is, recordable in that. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And there are several factors of these things. They act like primates in many ways. So there's many reasons. I don't blame people for thinking that they're either primates or hominids or something. Especially, like I said, somebody who has a roadside crossing, they're just driving down the road and they see one cross in front of them, or a hunter's in a tree stand, one walks under his stand and off into the woods. They're usually the people that are like, oh no, it's just a natural animal. I don't blame them for a minute. Of course, it acts and walks and is present like a natural animal. But when people have repeat encounters, that's usually where you start getting the weird stuff. Somebody will say, call me up and say, oh, they're coming on my property. And that is usually they have these repeat encounters, and that's where the weird stuff starts.
So when you say weird stuff, can you give us some examples of things that you've heard?
Sure. I would, I usually let people tell their story, and then I ask, okay, what else is weird going on? And if it's a repeat witness, I don't think there's a single time that someone hasn't either told me, well, my house is haunted, or, or we see strange lights, or we've seen UFOs. So, then you have this compounding stuff. Again, how rare is it for someone to see a UFO and a Bigfoot? Both are pretty rare occurrences when they start happening at the same time or in the same place. It's definitely worth noting. But when it's these repeat encounters, and like I said, especially when they're coming onto people's property where they're around their home and they can just observe this stuff, that's where these weirder issues tend to happen.
How many out of the cases you kind of specialize in the weird stuff in that, as far as like your research and the people that contact you and that they come to you because they know that you're more open to hearing those sort of things. So how many of your stories do you actually get that are just plain simple, I saw it cross the road, or let's take it to the people that, like you said, they have the ones on their property and stuff. How many of those people are just plain like flesh and blood style encounters, and what percentage of them have the other stuff associated with them?
I would say most of them continue to be flesh and blood things because they haven't made those connections. And I try not to lead witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I do all the normal Bigfoot stuff. I'll give you an example. I was called by a guy here in York County, a little bit north of me. He said, hey, I saw Bigfoot on my property yesterday. I think when he called me, it was a day had gone by. I said, okay, I'll be out there tomorrow. So I met him the next day. So it's all pretty fresh in his memory. And I had him tell me the story. And he's where'd you see him? He has a pond on his property. They were across the pond. I said, well, let's go over there and look. He said, no, I'm not going over there. He said, you can go over there. I'm not going over there. I said, all right. So I went over and I had my walking stick. I said, tell me where to stop where they were standing. And he stopped me and I said, I'll raise my walking stick. How tall were they? They ended up being about 8-9 feet tall. Whatever he saw two of them there standing there looking at him. And one was a little shorter than the other. Both had glowing red eyes, which is unusual, but put that aside for the moment. But, I come back and you do all the normal Bigfoot stuff. I'm looking for, prints and everything else. And come back around and I'm talking to him at the end of the day. And I said, and he's asking me questions like, what do you think they're following the electric lines and all this stuff? And I said, maybe, I can't tell you for sure. But then he starts, as I'm leaving, he says, my house is haunted. I said, okay, well, tell me more about that. And he starts telling me, and he says, I have pictures of these guys that haunt the house. They're bikers. I'm like, they're bikers? How do you know they're bikers? He's like, well, they just look like bikers. And he's like, I have photos of them. I'll show them to you. And he brings out these photos. And to him, they look like bikers. He's like, see, that guy looks like he's wearing sunglasses and he's got, long hair and a beard and all this stuff. And to me, they look like ghostly images of Sasquatch. I'm looking at, they look very misty, like a typical ghost photo, but of a Sasquatch. He's saying sunglasses. I'm just seeing big black eyes. Big hairy dude, or whatever it was. And he's telling me like, this happens and they climb up on his roof and he hears them walking on the roof and he's thinking this is all spirit activity, not knowing that this is also associated with Bigfoot. So he compounds and gets all this weird stuff, but in his mind, he had never connected the two for a second. And, he just said, I had Bigfoot on my property. Same thing happens, quite a few times where people just, they don't connect anything weird. And then, but when I started asking them, have you seen any weird lights or, any other stuff? And they tell me my house is haunted. So I'm really making these connections necessarily more than the witnesses. But I do get, roadside crossings and stuff. People call me and just, I just saw it, alongside the road and etc.
So I know that you go out and do investigating, as you said, on your own and that as well. What are some of the weird things that you have had happen?
That night at Pandemonium was pretty crazy. The one that started with the wood knocks. Well, it started earlier in the night. It started when I didn't have my recorder running. There was a huge crashing sound. It sounded like there were metal guardrails around. And again, this is just in my head. It sounded like, a Major League Baseball player had taken a 2x4 and smashed it into a metal guardrail on one of these forest roads. And we went out looking. We thought maybe there was a car accident. We went out looking for this crashing sound and never found anything. No evidence of anything. But then end up going to sleep a little after midnight, waking up at 3:20. Something very audibly was walking around our campsite for most of the night. We've recorded screams and howls in the distance, and what they call the 900-pound owl, the owl that sounds about an octave deeper than all the other owls. And the one of the strangest things of the night, I kept going to the edge of we kind of lit the fire in the campsite and kind of made our border, because whatever it was seemed to be like getting closer and closer. And I would go to the edge of the campsite and I would look out at this one tree. I kept doing it. I kept going to the edge, and it looked like there was the only thing I can describe is it looked like a plain white mask, like just a white mask that was just hung on this tree. And I'm looking at it, and I didn't even tell the other dude that was with me because I thought I'm crazy. The bark must be taken off that tree and the moonlight's hitting it or something. It's just appearing like that. I'll look at it in the morning. I'll see that's what it is, But I kept going back and looking at it and going back and looking at it. For some reason, it was just so eerie looking. And then in the morning, I get up and I go right to that and I look and there's nothing on that tree. So that was very odd. The other thing that was pretty odd was as I was, we were packing up the campsite and I had my pack hanging from paracord on a tree. And I reached around. I didn't look around the backside. I just reached around and untied the knot and grabbed my pack. And then in the paracord was wound, like if you can imagine a spring, and this is an old, like rusty old metal bed spring, was twisted into the paracord. So something or someone with hands had to do that. Like I don't think a raccoon could have done it. I don't think, it would take something to manipulate it and twist it onto that string. besides that, you could see a huge wake. There was ferns on the ground. You could see a huge wake where something walked through the ferns right into our campsite. My buddy who was with me said, I woke up and I saw something. He's like, I thought it was like the moonlight or something. He said, I saw weird lights. And he's like, I didn't know what it was. And like, we both had these weird dreams all night that we woke up from these weird dreams too. But in any case, the spring had been wound into the paracord, and you could see where someone or something had walked through these ferns right up to our campsite. Very, very strange. Really weird. If someone did it, I mean, you don't walk up on people's campsites. We didn't have any firearms, but they didn't know that. You don't want to be. I've done it by mistake. I've walked into people's campsites and had to apologize very quickly. At night on investigations, like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. People are like, what the heck are you doing here? And just, so you don't want to be doing that. And I think most people know that. So if it was somebody just trying to mess with us, again, we walked around. We're in the middle of nowhere. We walked around just to make sure there was nobody else there, because we wanted to see who was around at night, and there was nobody else to our knowledge there. So if somebody did that, I guess they're pretty brave. But I think it was part of the weirdness we experienced. Other cases I've had, we felt we were getting something thrown at us. It was dark and we couldn't see we could hear it coming through the trees. We assumed it was either pebbles or acorns or something. And my investigation partner had left something there was a little rural cemetery in this one spot. He had left something up there, and he said, I left you a gift. I'd like something in return, which is not, I was like, don't do that. As soon as he said that, I went, don't ask for stuff. And we got this weird cry. As soon as he said that, this weird cry came off in the woods. We were getting this red eye shine, at least 6-8 feet off the ground. There's not many things that have red eye shine. Bears can. Black bears don't usually. They can, but it was not acting bear-like, whatever this was. But after he gets this cry in response, I said, hey, you were throwing stuff at us. Why don't you throw something? And I said, don't hit me with it, but throw it right here. And I pointed to the ground beside me, and within a second, something just comes through the tree, whap, hits the ground right beside me. Again, I couldn't find what it was. I assume it was a stone or an acorn or something. We're in the middle of the woods. There's a lot of detritus on the ground. So that, that's pretty strange. And besides that, a lot of weird lights. We've seen a lot of strange lights out there.
Fascinating. That's really cool. You touched on something there that I wanted to bring up. I believe it was on your podcast that there was a lady, and she was out in her side yard at a garden, and she heard this like sound of a huge crash, like you had mentioned, like something hitting a guardrail. Heard this big crash, and then she looked up, and the Bigfoot was standing with like its hands on the edge of the fence watching her.
Yeah.
And I've always really liked that interview, that story with that lady. And you said that you heard the sound of like a baseball bat hitting a guardrail, or like a car crash sound, and she described the same thing.
Yeah.
So how many other stories that I haven't heard that you've heard that have that same kind of sound and to that effect? A lot of other researchers also hear the sound of like a slamming car door in the woods.
I've recorded the car door slam.
Oh, cool.
In the middle of the woods. I've heard it twice and recorded it once. 3 miles out in the middle of nowhere on a Bigfoot investigation. It sounded exactly like a car door slamming, and my recording sounds like a car door slamming. And there was nowhere to put cars around us. We were near a river. I actually walked out to the river to make sure there wasn't, not that boats have car doors, but I thought maybe there's a boat out there with a door that could slam or something. There was nothing out on the river. Very, very strange. So yeah, I've heard that and recorded it. The crashing sounds, I didn't connect it when I was at first at Pandemonium. I didn't connect it until later when I started hearing these other stories. The woman I had on the podcast, they talk about, I believe the Ape Canyon incident. They would hear these crashing sounds, and I know Skinwalker Ranch has stuff like that. So it is a thing. I just didn't realize it at the time. I did, if I'd have known these other cases, I think when it happened, maybe it would have gotten my attention more.
Yeah, it's just really weird. Like I've actually we do investigations up at the Hayden Adventure. It's a place up in Upper Michigan, private, 80 acres of stuff. It's where I saw the orb in that, and we have heard a car door slam up there as well on several occasions. I mean, there are cars up there, but when
Mhm.
everyone on your team is accounted for and the cars are over there and the sound is coming from the other way, it's just very weird. Another thing that you mentioned was, the 800-pound owl.
Mhm.
And the mimicry of these things to mimic other animals, or what we believe to be in that. Um, do you think that this is something like that they mimicked, like that they were making that noise, or do you think it was something they did, or do you have any thought on that?
Again, it would make a lot of sense for something to mimic sounds. Like, what do we, you see the army movies and stuff, and the guys are making, trying to hide at night, and they're making bird sounds because they don't want to, use their voice and give themselves away. That would make a lot of sense. So, is it something doing that, or is it something else? When you have these instances, though, of like unknown language, and sometimes speaking to people, not just like, hey, I heard my dog's name called, so maybe this, at that point you say, well, maybe it learned how to mimic you calling your dog's name or something. But when they come, I'm thinking of like the Missouri Monster incident, where it's like it literally says, hey, can I have some of your coffee? From the woods, they hear this anomalous voice. And these other sounds that people have described, like hearing a forklift back up, in
Hmm.
the woods, and it's just like that. It's just sounded exactly like that. That makes me wonder if there's not something else going on, because if they are able to mimic that well, that is just another evolutionary advantage. Again, this is one of the reasons why I think there's something other than just a natural, what we would call a natural animal, because they have so many evolutionary advantages that they would be the king of evolution. They, if they can mimic better than a lyrebird or whatever, from those wonderful birds that can imitate any sound, they can mimic better than that. They can, they're faster than any other land mammal. They can hide. They have super camouflage abilities. They have all these evolutionary advantages. So many, so that at that point they might as well be paranormal, because they're not unlike anything else.
Hmm.
So I just can't see them doing all these sounds with mimicry. But again, maybe like no one's seen them do this
Hmm.
stuff. No one's seen them call their dog's name. They just saw Bigfoot, and then 2 days later they heard their dog's name called in a deep voice, and they assume, you know logically, that oh, it must be Bigfoot calling my dog's name. He wants to eat my dog or take him away or whatever. um but no one's seen it. No one's seen
Hmm.
Bigfoot sit there and call their dog.
Yeah, obviously. Um, yeah, so one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because you do a lot of the connections between, the Fae and the Bigfoot and the other things like that. And so when you're researching like the Fae lore and the fairies and stuff like that, do you see this kind of stuff, like the metal crashing sounds and the car door slams and the mimicry of that in that stuff?
Yeah, well, the problem is that a lot of these Fae accounts are from before cars, right?
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I often wonder, like, did they did they hear a carriage door shutting at that time, or are they describing just like there was a crashing noise? And you do get that
Yeah.
sometimes. There was a cacophonous sound or something, they'll say,
Okay.
and where we have a reference point, like, well, it sounded like a car door slamming. I wonder if it was the same sound they were hearing, or if that the sound has changed over time, to for whatever reason, to mimic car doors or something. But yeah, they have cacophonous sounds happen. And one of the most fascinating things with me, that I just love documenting this folklore from all over the world, whether it's Fey accounts, or trolls in Norway, or these various creatures in Germany, various folklore creatures. We'll talk about things getting up and walking on their roof. That's such an odd detail. And you get these accounts from modern Bigfoot witnesses. People who live in trailers will tell me, "Oh, yeah, I got up and walked on my roof." Like, on a trailer? A 10-foot creature got up and didn't leave a mark. nothing. Like, I used to do telephone work. I've been on top of trailers. I've dented many a trailer roof, running cable and stuff. I like slate roofs too. People tell me, oh yeah, it's like a slate roof. Well, you can damage a slate roof pretty easily, especially something that heavy running. And they'll say, oh, it was running back and forth. It was running across my roof. So here's a 8-foot, probably 900-pound thing running back and forth on your roof and didn't leave a trace, didn't leave any bit of damage. Fascinating to me. But you go back in these folklore accounts and they'll talk about these trolls climbing up on the roof, or these Draugr, which are kind of like undead, these Viking undead things. A weird note about it. Like, oh yeah, they climb up on top of your roof. Well, what is that? There's the famous account. I forget what it's called. It was in England where a series of footprints, a single footprint, was found. I think it was hooved, but it went on for like 50 miles or something. It was documented, back before the 1900s sometime. I forget exactly when. But one of the weird things it said is like it went over people's roofs. Like these footprints were on people's roofs. So what is it with these things and roofs? Like they climb up on roofs, and it just makes me think like there's something weird with that. Like what is it about that? Why are all these things climbing on roofs? I don't know, but it's completely fascinating to me. And when I hear modern Bigfoot witnesses tell me, yeah, it was up on my roof, it just, rings a bell. I'm just like, yeah, well, it's like many other things.
I know it's random, but like the whole story and mythology and stuff of Santa Claus too is supposed to be based in Fey lore. And again, you have another mythological creature that's up on your roof. Do you think that that's connected as well?
Santa is, so Bigfoot falls into, for me, the general category of wild man. And that's, in fact, what we called him before we called him Bigfoot. If you go back in the old newspaper articles, we called him wild men. On back to the Middle Ages, they called him wild men. Santa was originally a wild man. We have a very tame, very candy-coated version of Santa now. Mm-hmm. And the original Santa was a wild man, and he hangs out with elves, and he climbs on roofs, and you do a gifting exchange with Santa. You leave him cookies, and he leaves you presents. Santa is 100% a wild man. It's most clearly demonstrated if you want to look for like one-on-one, like Bigfoot things with, you get to the Pennsylvania Dutch sort of proto-Santa, the Belsnickel. And the stories of this thing, peeking in windows and scaring people to death and knocking on the sides of houses. And it just sounds like a Bigfoot report. It absolutely sounds like a Bigfoot report. So Christmas time in general is associated with wild men. Santa was absolutely, there's a book out there written by someone called Santa Claus List of the Wild Men. He was a wild man. So yeah, there's absolutely a connection with that.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. So another thing that you talk about, you have a chapter in one of these books, I think it's the volume 1, about the woman in white.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of association as well between Bigfoot, wild men, these balls of light, and the woman in white, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, and that was something my co-author, Josh Cutchin, when I said, hey, I'm doing a chapter on women in white, he was like, what? Okay, you're not going to find anything on that. And sure enough, I found a lot on that, and I keep finding stuff on it. These wild men from all over the world. Someone recently, I didn't have any from Asia, a wild man that was associated with a woman in white. Someone recently sent me one. I'm forgetting the details. I forgot the name of the wild man. But what really broke it open for me. So I first heard about this story on Sasquatch Chronicles, a modern story of these guys that were having repeat encounters with many Bigfoot, different types. And they said, what else is weird? This woman keeps coming around, this old woman. But she always wears white, just like dirty white, but she wears white. Her clothes are dirty. She wears, like, her shoes look like they're too big for her feet. I think they even described them as clown shoes. And she was acting very bizarrely. And I was in the Sasquatch Chronicles forum, I think, and I saw a bunch of other people say, you know what's weird? I saw a woman in white, kind of like what they're describing, and I drove down the road and I saw a Bigfoot. And really, really strange. So I started making note and like, wow, I wonder if this is a thing. And I started looking through the historical articles as I do, and I started finding instances of wild man reports, and then there would be, usually considered a separate thing. They're like, oh yeah, that somebody saw a wild man, but usually they see this ghostly woman in white there where they saw this wild man. Not making a connection, but just saying, hey, look, there's two weird things that happen in this little stretch of woods or whatever it is. So I started digging, and I thought, well, maybe there's more in folklore. And I'm going and I'm reading about, I think it was the Habsburg family in Austria, and how they had this woman in white spirit it was a portent of death. Whenever somebody would see it, they knew somebody was going to die. It was one of the royal families in Austria, and they said that they connected this woman by name to Perkta, which is this. Sometimes people say it's a goddess. It's more like a fairy figure. And I said, well, that's interesting. And let me look up this Perkta. And well, I started looking up Perkta, and that's what blew open the whole thing for me. So Perkta is this woman. She wears white. She can appear either old and hag-like or young and beautiful. She's accompanied by a retinue of two groups. One is called the Heimchen, and they are the souls of dead children, which she has lured away into the woods and have died. And they appear as orbs of light. And the other thing that follows her around are what they call the Perkten, and it's a group of hairy wild men. And as soon as I saw that, I went, "Oh, here we go. This is it." And from there, it just expanded all over the world. There's these wild men, and they either have a woman in white that accompanies them. Sometimes it's a female creature that's white, but there always seems to be a female. Sometimes they call it a wife, or sometimes an associate of some sort. But that's white that's associated with these wild men. It's fantastic. And people still send me articles today, like folklore from all over the place, with here's another one, here's another wild man with a woman in white.
That's really cool. Do you find that those stories, I know the woman in white has been associated with the guardians of the water, the old hag, and then the maiden, and the sword and the stone, not the sword and the stone, you know where I'm going with that? Can't think
yeah, I mean, I can point to a story very close to me in Michaux State Forest here in Pennsylvania. I met a witness, and he had heard me kind of mention this woman in white thing. I didn't know what he was doing. He was going to take me to where he saw Bigfoot. And he said, before I take you there, let me take you to this other place. And he takes me to this place called Pond Bank. It's a little town, very little town, kind of right on the edge of Michaux Forest. And it's named for a pond. It's got a pond. That's why it's named there. And he takes me to the pond, and he says, okay, my sighting was less than a mile as the crow flies from this pond. And he says, there's a legend associated with this pond. It's called the White Lady of Pond Bank. And he said, when you said women in white and Bigfoot, he's like, it just blew my mind. So I didn't know where he was taking me and what he was doing at this pond. So he tells me the story. There's this woman in white associated with it. You're supposed to go there and say, white lady, I have your baby. She appears on the other side and screams or something. I forget what the actual folklore is. But here we have this woman in white associated with a body of water. And less than a mile from here, he had these Bigfoot sightings. Interestingly enough, I'm interviewing him at the pond. When I play the interview back, you can hear behind us talking what sounds like Tuvan throat singing, very low, kind of droning. I can't do it. I can't get that low, but like that. As we're talking, it's so strange. And of course, people have associated that with Bigfoot. Neither of us heard it as we were standing there doing the interview. It just came up on the recording. So really neat. But yeah, that's come up a lot. They do tend to be associated with bodies of water, or the lake.
Lady of the Lake. That's what I was trying to think of, by the way.
Yeah.
From not Sword and Stone, the Holy Grail. Search of the Holy Grail.
Arthurian mythos. Yeah.
They picked up. So I have a personal story from out doing Bigfooting, and I want to share it with you because for personal reasons. I want to know if you've had any other stories or folklore or legends that pertain to this.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and I've put this out on one of our episodes of Finding Haydn that we have on YouTube and stuff, so you can see me actually encountering this and whatever and stuff for the people watching. But I don't talk about this much because it's such a weird encounter that I don't know. So out on the Hayden Adventure property, there's what we call the teepee, and it's this probably 18-foot tall, 16-foot wide teepee structure, like wooden stick structure, Bigfoot structure. And we were doing a night hike on the property. And me and my other investigator, Ethan, walked in by this structure, kind of look at it, and, see if anything's going on there. And we walked back out onto this, like a dirt track road that goes around the property. And I turned to look back at Ethan because he was behind me. And as I turned back around, standing about 5 feet or so away from me, looking, I would have seen it in profile, facing across, not looking at me, was this clown.
Clown.
It had a red, like a dark blood red beret, striped, kind of puffy. I call him like a French clown, if that makes sense. He had a big frill neck collar, big nose, not big nose like a honker nose, but like a troll, kind of protruding.
Okay.
Long nose, probably about like 3 inches or so, just abnormal human, but still within human parameters, I guess. The neck was kind of up, but like out. If you ever seen Phineas and Ferb, the cartoon, it looked kind of like Dr. Doofenshmirtz, the lab coat guy.
I'm not familiar with it, but
Okay,
that's all right.
look
I'm
that
still getting
up.
a good image. Yeah.
Okay, but he had a very body shape like that. Arms were straight at his sides, looking straight, dead-eyed past me. Really big eyes. Yeah, and I saw it, and I used to do a haunted house attraction, so I'm familiar with like props and Halloween stuff and all these things. And I've done so much of that as I turned back around and saw this clown and looked past it, it didn't even faze me as, oh my gosh, what is this thing? Because I'm like, oh, it's just a clown standing there. And then it slowly registered that this shouldn't be there. I'm not at a haunted house. I'm in the middle of the woods, and this thing is standing there. And I looked back at it, and it was gone.
Wow.
So I totally I don't know what to think of this, what to make of it. I recently started collecting these MetaZoo trading cards or playing cards. They're all different cryptids from around the world and all that stuff. And one of the cards is killer clowns from Pennsylvania or North Carolina or something. And it's a clown creature that's supposed to be out in the woods. And I've looked this up, I've Googled it, I can't find the stinking clown. There's only things that I can find are like there was a whole bunch of people running around the woods dressed as clowns in 2016. Nothing. Nah, I don't care about that. There was clowns over in Europe several years ago. I can't remember exactly, but there was a rash of clown sightings over there. But somewhere they had to get this idea of this clown in the woods. So, Mr. Timothy Renner, have you heard any stories of weird clowns associated with anything that you do?
Well, I know there is like I haven't done research on this. I've just come across it, so I can't really speak on it with any authority. But I know there is like, I want to say they're Perot sightings, but they might have a different name for it. These odd clown-like things associated with the paranormal. I can't tell you any more than that. I can tell you that I know it's a thing. But my immediate thought is like this goes into the category of stuff which, I mean, I just love this stuff because it's so bizarre. We started getting these stories on the show of Bunny Man, where people would just see someone that appeared to be someone in a rabbit costume. It didn't appear to be a real rabbit that was 6 feet tall or anything. But not around Easter, so this isn't, someone trying to be the Easter Bunny in weird places at weird times. And it's just like, what is the point of that? Like, it's just so odd. Now, some of them certainly are just people. I'm going to dress like a rabbit and go freak people out for sure. Mm-hmm. But some of them seem to be just the details are so weird. One of my co-hosts, John, saw one not far from me at all one night with his family. He was driving up the road. This guy, not around Easter. It was like nowhere close to Easter. this guy sitting in the middle of the field in a chair in a bunny costume, waving at him. And he said he was lit from above. And I said, John, where'd that light come from? He had never thought about that. He's like, I don't know. He's like, but he was illuminated from above. I was like, yeah, there's no street light in the middle of that field, you know? He's like, I don't know how he was lit up. I don't know. But he said it was really just this bizarre, you know, out of nowhere bunny man in the middle of a field. And we've gotten a number of accounts like that. So I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it reminds me of that. Just this weird, out of place, like almost silly or goofy thing. You know, there seems to be an element to the other that sometimes has this ridiculous notion, almost, I don't know, it's like almost to discredit our stories or something. You know what I mean? Like it's like the built-in negation, they say, of the stories, where you tell that story and people are like, okay, you saw a clown. Okay. And now they're not going to believe the rest of your stories, right? Because it's so crazy. That's so, but you know, I've heard this stuff. You know, I've had, it's a whole other topic, but I don't think I've ever been abducted, but I've had these gray alien things appear to me in what I believe are post-dream states. I do not believe I'm dreaming. And the last time I saw them, they were all dressed completely silly. I've never seen more than 3 at a time. The whole room was filled with them. They were dressed, if you can imagine, like a Native American, like ritual dance gear, but something that you would have bought at the dollar store in the 80s or something. They were like neon. They looked like neon plastic. You know, nothing natural about them. Really goofy looking, and they were dancing. It was just absolutely ridiculous. I almost laughed. I don't generally like these things, and I remember almost like laughing at it, like, this is ridiculous. But it's that kind of thing. It's like, it's so bizarre and so silly that it almost is like, do you tell anybody? Because this is so weird, you know?
Yeah, I definitely, like I said, go ahead.
I'm at the point where everything's weird, so I'm all in for the weird. So I'm going to tell everything.
Definitely, I know. Like I've been so excited to have you on the show, because I really wanted to share that story with you, because like I want to know what your opinion is on it and stuff, because like I said, I don't tell that story. Like I get interviewed all the time. I don't share that story because I completely think myself. I was there. I saw it. I know what I saw. I have it on video, not it, but I have me on video reacting to this thing, talking about it right when it happens. Ethan didn't see it at all, didn't see nothing there, so it had to be in my head what I saw, but it was real. I mean, could have touched it, you know, and
we've been John, the same fellow I was talking about. He was really kind of skeptical that we go to this area and we see weird lights there consistently. I can't guarantee it'll happen, but most of the time we go there and we see strange lights. And he said, like, he was so doubtful. He said, take me with you. I'll tell you what you're seeing. I'm sure that. I was okay. Come on. Like, if you can explain it, I'm happy. And when he went with us, we decided, hey, let's hike into the place where we normally have park in an area. There's a parking area, and we look into the woods. So, well, let's do something different. Let's hike into the woods and be there. Just hike in during the day and wait till night and see what happens. So that's what we did. It's a much longer hike. You have to park on the other side of the mountain and hike up from the river. But we did it, and we just sat there and waited. And night comes, and he starts saying, like, I think I'm seeing lights. I said, don't think you see light. Don't, just wait. You'll know when you see them. Like, don't convince yourself. You'll know for sure. And eventually he starts seeing, he was like, oh my gosh. He's like, I don't know what those are. And at some point he was so enthralled with these lights, and they came closer to us than they ever had. That we were on a wide path in the middle of the woods, and they were coming right up to the edge of the woods, right up to us. And he's so enthralled with these. He's laughing because he was like so amazed, and he's on his knees reaching for this light, and he's describing it, and he says he's reaching out for it, trying to touch it. And he's saying it's golf ball. It looked like the size of a golf ball. Well, I was about 6 feet to his left, and pretty sure I was looking at the same light, because I was looking at him reach out towards this thing. It didn't look like a golf. It just looked like a little pin of light, like a little pen light or something. Just a little tiny light. I could see the light, but so I've often wondered, are we looking at the same thing, the two of us, and seeing something different? You know, is that the way this stuff is manifesting, or is it messing with our heads in that way? There's been other times where I've been with my other investigation partner, Chad, where he's described, you know, he's looking at these lights, same place, and he's describing something. I was like, I kind of looks like that to me, but not exactly. And now I think back and I'm like, well, I wonder if he really was seeing what he was describing and it just didn't appear the same way to me.
Definitely. Yeah. Man, I wish we had all the time in the world to talk, because I have so many more questions for you, and we didn't even scratch the surface. I mean, these books are awesome. I mean, they're really thick, and that's not all your books. I mean, before you were on, we were talking about some of your other works, all of your, Bigfoot in Pennsylvania, Bigfoot of the West Coast, Don't Look Behind You, Beyond the Seventh Gate, and your new book, The Witch Cloud. Can you talk? I have to get to work in a little while here, but real quick, if you can discuss a little bit about that. We actually went out this past year to Sox Cover Bridge and the Suicide Bridge, and we did an investigation out there. We actually caught a horse, like a whinny of pain, or like a howl, on the Sox Bridge.
Wow.
And that's in our episode on YouTube right now. You can go check that out. And we went down behind the football field there in Gettysburg, and there's that where the night battle happened.
Mm-hmm.
We went into there and we captured a cannon and a musket fire at about 3 a.m. So
yeah, we've caught what sounds like a cannon. I assume it's a cannon. I don't know. It certainly sounds like a cannon off of Suicide Bridge at like 2 a.m. or something. Like, who's out there doing this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've caught a bunch of anomalous sounds. I had just written Beyond the Seventh Gate when I first heard about this, so-called Suicide Bridge. It's Eisenhower Bridge in Gettysburg. And Beyond the Seventh Gate, about the first half of the book is debunking these goofy urban legends about this place. The second half goes into like, well, wait, even though there's all of these goofy urban legends that history doesn't back up, there is weird stuff that happens here. Let's look at the weird stuff. So I kind of consider myself immune to these urban legends. And I hear about this Suicide Bridge. I was actually at a paranormal conference. I was just eavesdropping on some ghost hunters, and they're like, oh, the scariest place in Gettysburg is Suicide Bridge. So I kind of filed it away. Like, I'll have to go there. So the first time I went, I was with Adam from Conspiranormal podcast, and he's still my co-host. He just hasn't been on in a long time, James, but he's welcome back whenever he has time. But he was with me, and we went there, and I was being kind of flippant on like Suicide Bridge, because I thought they meant people were jumping off this bridge, and it's just like, they should call it Broken Ankle Bridge. You're not going to kill yourself jumping off this bridge. I was just being really flippant, but I did capture a anomalous light on the bridge. I was taking some photographs, which I didn't notice till I got home, and James had to urinate and went out in the woods by the bridge, and I jokingly took off in my Jeep. I was driving. I took off in the Jeep, pretending to leave him there. He's like, oh, we're not out there. It's like the whole other trees, everything. That's kind of dismissive of this area. Then I started coming back. We were hiking the battlefield one night, and Chad and I, and we have to be off the battlefield in Gettysburg, I think 10 o'clock in the summer, maybe 9, 10, something like that. So we had to get off the battlefield. He wanted to go somewhere else. I was like, well, there's this other place. It's like, I've been there before. I don't know if we'll. And we went there, and it was so crazy active with these like bangs and knocks and weird sounds and all this stuff that we started going back. And I think probably by the second time, I was looking to do a special project for the 300th episode of my podcast of Strange Familiars. And I think by the second time we went back, I was like, this is it. This is the project. So I started digging in and debunking again these urban legends associated with it, but then looking at like, well, there's a lot of really weird stuff that happens there, and sort of documented our experiences. We interviewed a lot of witnesses that we met on the bridge, and just had a really, really interesting time. And makes me kind of question what exactly ghosts are. Because people are attributing all this activity to ghosts, but there's a lot of things. There's like knocks happening around there constantly, both on the bridge and from the woods around it. People hearing things walk along the bank and seeing, red eyes out in the woods and all these things that we associate with cryptids. But, ask anybody. So, it's Ghost. If it's in Gettysburg, it's Ghost. So we kind of pushed around that idea a little bit. Like, is it Ghost, or if it is Ghost, like maybe are ghosts not exactly what we think they are, in the way that I say Bigfoot might not be exactly what we think it is.
Yeah, when we first got to the Sox Bridge, my mom was there with us and stuff, and she had the Ovilus 5B, and it's talking, and it says something like, "I'm here" or something, and she goes, "Where are you?" And from the opposite shore of the like, we're on one side of the bridge, and it was on the other, this tree crashes down into the water.
Whoa, that's
Right
awesome.
on cue. She's like, "Are you on the bridge?" And it goes, "I'm
Oh, wow.
here." Are you on the bridge? And this tree comes down, and we told that we went out with another paranormal group that night, was doing the uh, he took us out there to show us around and stuff, and he said that another time that he was doing tours out there, they had a similar event happen on the Eisenhower Bridge over there.
Mm.
So that was pretty
Yeah,
cool.
we were doing some like Estes box sessions. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Yep.
that technique.
We did that too. Yep.
Yeah, and got some really, really interesting replies. One of the things was, sometimes we'll do that, and you ask questions and you get nonsense in reply, and you think, well, this isn't really working. This is just random nonsense. But when you ask questions and you get kind of pointed answers that make sense, that's when he's like, I think something's going on here. And we could talk another time about my theory about how that may or may not work, but we got some really, really interesting replies, and in fact some stuff that was pretty shook me up a little bit, some of these replies.
It was I was doing an Estes session on the bridge when we captured that horse. Yeah. So it was during that, and we heard it. We have it on audio. We're at the far end of the bridge by like the sign and stuff, and there was some other people down at the other end, and they heard it as well.
Oh, wow.
So, but there's no horses in that entire area. I mean, we did some drone and stuff earlier that day. There's no horse. There's no farm field. There's nothing there anymore. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's some fields around there, but they don't keep horses in them. No, there's, because the fields to the south are all swamp. They wouldn't keep horses in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool, man. So, I thank you for coming on. Thank you for, better late than never, and thanks for hanging around and chilling out at the end here as well.
Well, I owe you another half an hour. You want me to come back? I'll come back.
I would love that. I would love to have you on anytime that you got time to come on, because I mean, we have just scratched the surface of things that we can talk about, and theories and investigations and stuff. And I mean, you got all your books and his books and stuff. I mean, again, Where the Footprints End, available. Your new book, The Witch Cloud, on Amazon. The Haunted Bridges of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and all the other Bigfoot in Pennsylvania, Bigfoot of the West Coast, and your podcast, Strange Familiars. I listen to that every week as well. Awesome stuff, man.
Tell everybody, if anybody wants to contact me, and there's links to all my stuff, like get all my books and etc. It's all at strangefamiliars.com. So just go there, and the contact information goes right to me. And then if you want to get my stuff with you, I don't mind if you get it from Amazon, but you can get it directly from me from our Etsy shop. We have all those books plus a book of my illustrations called Apparitions. That's available there as well. So and I love hearing from people. If you got stories, or if anybody's local to South Central Pennsylvania and they got something they want me to look at, love to hear from you.
Very cool, man. Very cool. I would love to have you back on again, and or on my other show, Whispers from the Dark, too, as well. But that is all the time we got. I have to boogie out of here and get to my day job. Otherwise, I would stick around and talk longer with you as well. But
no worries. Sorry I was late once again.
No, it's all right, man. I said, like, there's a time gap in there, and I never know, like, East Coast, West Coast. I'm like, it's Central Time. I don't know what time you're in, and so this is what time.
Yeah, so. It was my phone is junk. I need a new phone. My calendar just is not right. My phone isn't right. But anyway.
Well, it's all right, man. You made it, and that's all that matters. So.
All right. Have a great one.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being on. You have a great day, man.
See ya.
All right. See ya. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Monday Morning Monsters. I'm your host, Barnaby Jones, and you can find me at WisconsinCaps.com, Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. And you can watch all of our other YouTube episodes as well. WLTK-DB Radio has a app you can download in the Google Play and Apple iTunes store, and you can listen to us all on there. You can also listen to this show wherever you get your podcasts as well. Search for Monday Morning Monsters or WLTK-DB Talk Radio, and anywhere you get that. And the next event that you can find us live at will be September 17th, so we got more time to talk about that later. Next week's guest is Kenny Irish, the crypto-punkologist, and he'll be talking about his books as well as cryptids and Bigfoot of up in New York area. So, all right, that's next week's show. Tune in next week, Monday Morning Monsters. Until then, we'll see you out there.